Today, we're excited to bring you a way too early two-round 2027 Superflex tight end premium rookie mock draft. That's right. We're diving into a class that hasn't even declared yet. Already has Dynasty managers buzzing. So stick around for all of our probably bad takes and more. And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. Justin with David and JP. Excited to do two rounds. Last 2027 mock we did was just one round. You know, some of these players probably will not be second rounders next year, but also a lot of these second rounders we're talking about have a lot of potential to probably jump into round one conversation next year, with a good 26 season. So definitely interesting putting these names on the radar. Very excited to talk about all of these players. Before we hop into this, just want to first hit that like, hit that subscribe if you have any interest in these 27 rookies, because we're going to be putting a lot more content about 26, 27 rookies. Super important in Dynasty Fantasy Football, of course. And we just want to talk a little bit about this general concept of 27 picks being valued over 26 pick. Is this a bad thing? Is this a good thing? It's hard to say because these players look phenomenal. So I just want to first again, I know we've talked about it in other episodes, but before we talk and do the mock, let's just ask that question to both of you guys. Do you think that the 27 picks being valued over 26 picks is crazy? Do you understand part of it? I'll go David first, then JP.
Well, I mean, I definitely understand it. There's a ton more upside in this class, a little bit of concern in the 26 class, but there's a whole year of points that those guys get a spin in the 20 or get a score for you in the 26 class. I get the element of, it's more stable asset, it's longer, and it's higher upside. So I get it, but I'm impatient. So I still want my 26 picks.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit worried just that I feel like it's been a couple of years where we're like, oh, just wait till next year. Oh, just wait until next year. And it kind of keeps happening. And then quarterbacks or whatever it may be, like they flopped kind of this year. A lot of them did. And there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the 2027 class. But one or two could come back to school for their senior year. One or two could flop. And then we might just be in the same position where we have two or three quarterbacks that we really like. So I definitely understand it because I think the guy at the top, he's probably going to be a first round startup pick, or at least close to it, right when he comes into the NFL. So there's definitely some intrigue there. I think I like 2027 a lot. I want to have some picks there, but I probably value them probably equal now today, I would say.
The reason I asked this, of course, is we also asked our audience last week with our community question: how early do you start tracking future draft classes? Do you think it helps or hurts your dynasty decision making? And we got some replies we'll read from our audience, because I think that this whole concept of this valuation is fascinating. David, can you go ahead and read our first reply here from the audience?
Yeah, friend of the show, Awesome Dumpling. I tend to start tracking in the middle of the season, less names and more broad topics such as positional strengths. There's a sexy QB prospect and general community response. I'd say that I'm behind on sleeper picks, which makes my later picks less effective overall. I think that last part's not really worth worrying about. So much changes even from now till draft season, You got plenty of time to figure out who good sleepers are. Plenty of time between now and your draft. I think it's really helpful to understand strengths of the class, as he pointed out. And I do think it helps to understand like who the can't miss prospects are. Even some can't miss prospects miss, but to know how strong it is at the top, because that gives you a sense of how valuable mid and late round first round picks are. If it's a weak class, you don't necessarily want to trade for late first, but if it's like it was a couple years ago, you get Ladd McConkey and Bo Nix at the end of the first. Some drafts Brock Bowers at the end of the first. That class was insane. I'm not saying this class is going to be the same, but it has a chance to be. So yeah, I think understanding that pretty much all 27 firsts are valuable, whereas maybe late 26 first you're a little more worried about.
Absolutely. And JP, can you go ahead and read question number 2 for us here?
Friend of the show, David Covington. I know the top names may be a year out from rookie drafts, but even those change so much over the course of the college season that I think it could lead to me having take lock where I don't adjust the way I should to the production in the past year. I do think that if you're holding out for an extra year when you can be contending, like it can hurt you. And like we saw with this 2026 class, like quarterback, if you were holding out for quarterback for this class, I'm sorry, but it's not quite as rich as we thought it was going to be. So I think that it can hurt you at times, but I think like David said, if you got a generational prospect and like, okay, I know I can get the 101 for sure. I think everybody kind of knows who the 101 is in this class too. And it's just a really special player. And I think he's going to be a huge boost. So I think you don't want to weigh it too heavily. Like, we don't have the answers for sure. We just have like the data that we have for that day, but we still have a year and a half of data right now. So I don't want to take too much of what I think and say that's definitely fact.
And last response we have here into the show, Trav Bob. Personally, I don't have the time or desire to track individual players more than a year out. I will take, say, a 2028 pick, but only because it's a first, not because I'm hoping for any specific player. None of these players exist to me yet until 2027. And I think I definitely would probably challenge that statement just from the fact that I know for a fact, based off of that logic, 2027 players don't exist to you until next offseason, which is 2026, right? But I know for a fact that Jeremiah Smith exists for you, right? Some of these players do exist for you, Trav Bob. I know personally. So, like, well, you're saying 2028 doesn't exist till 2027. I think it's maybe more 2028 doesn't exist till 2026. I think it's probably more, but doesn't exist yet. I'll kind of agree with if that makes sense. I think it starts to typically exist with the exception of the true, like, you're taken for Tua type of vibes. There's that generational player, right? Trevor Lawrence was that theoretically a while back, right? Where he was the clear 101 for years to come. Caleb Williams was the 101 for a while. Like, there's this player that you're tanking for, but outside of Timothy, that guy, right? I think his point is that you're not really counting on anything outside of maybe that flag plant guy. And then just for me on this, I do think planning too much to the future just is not a good thing because realistically speaking, if you have anything other than a total tear down to the stud from this season, like at this point in the season, you can start tearing down and plan to take that as. But if you've been planning that for a while, the odds are that you probably are hurting your overall dynasty team more by trying to make moves to guarantee you get the 101 a year out. If you manage this entire season under those premises, unless you've been deliberately going to buy every injured player that exists, Malik Neighbors, Joe Burrows, everything like that, and that's the way that you're going about this tank. And even then, like, now, how are you going to tank next year when Burrow's back and Neighbors comes back in a season and make sure you get the 101, unless you're going to take losses again, potentially, or it just becomes very muddled and muddy to try to actually tank 2 years out for a player. Where I think for the most part, unless you have a very deliberate plan and know that that plan could go very wrong, it's probably not the correct strategic move to do. Curious your opinion, David, on that.
I follow recruiting classes in college, so I know incoming freshmen just because I like the process. I really like college football. I would say I don't really trade picks for specific players until like on the clock because there's just so much variance between now and the draft. There's still several games to be played. There's combine, there's offseason, there's interviews, there's all this stuff. But even after the NFL draft, there's variance between that and like the few days between your next draft or while you have different drafts going. So I don't necessarily target players, but I like following the class, and I think certainly understanding what positions you can feel kind of confident in early on. Like, don't trust quarterback evaluations. They just have to keep growing. Your running backs, if they're producing early, they're probably going to keep producing. Wide receivers, you can tell based on how much production they're getting, how much volume they're getting. Tight ends are a crapshoot. So, understanding that, you can kind of start to form a feeling of draft classes going out. But this 27 draft class everybody's been talking about for years, I don't even know who I'm taking second. I'm second in this draft, and I got to pick in like 5-10 minutes, whatever it's going to be. I still don't know who I'm taking. And I think guys that I have in my second round could have a case to be 102 here. So there's just a ton of information that's going to change between now and then. And these names are going to change. But I do think you can get a little bit by understanding the strengths of the position groups.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Very curious. Even though we're not going to talk about your answers on next week's show, this is last week's community question. We will engage with you if you comment. Let us know what you thought about that, if you agree, disagree, etc., and how that should be valued. Next week's community question, however, if you would like to get involved, read on the show, is going to be a lot simpler one, not as deep of a strategy question. Who is your favorite target for the playoff run, and what are you paying for them? And again, no right or wrong answer here. You can tell us your favorite target is a cheap guy that costs a early third or late second. Like maybe it's Aaron Jones because you're a budget shopper like me. You can tell us whoever. Would be very happy to read several of your answers on next week's show. Let us know in the comments below or hit us up at DinoConFF on X. Again, would love to hear back from some of you. So that being said, we are going to hop right into our mock draft 12 minutes into the recording here, as it always is. Maybe some of y'all are skipping forward to this point in the timestamps. Little housekeeping for the mock draft. It is super flex, so that means quarterbacks will be going round 1. It is also 1.75 tight end premium. That is our standard Dino construction format. So if a tight end goes in round 1, maybe we would not advise that in non-tight end premium, or maybe we'd advise him to be a few picks later in non-tight end premium. So with all that being said, here's going to be the draft order. I will have 101, David will have 102, JP will have 103, and then we just keep going in that order. Me, David, JP, me, David, JP for both rounds. We're going to have a ticker going on the bottom of the screen that will look like this, because I am taking Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver from the Ohio State University. I don't know what else there is to say about this guy other than people say he would have been the 101 in the NFL draft last year after his freshman season. This guy is, we say generational all the time, but this guy is generational, right? This is a guy that I think if you get him on a dynasty team, you probably have a wide receiver one for 10 years, just about, right? 7 to 10 years. There might be the occasional down year due to injury, quarterback stuff, but I think he's almost as close to bulletproof as you can get, right? He's produced at wide receiver university, regardless of whether or not there are studs around him, regardless of changing quarterback last year to this year. The statistics are phenomenal given the fact that this team barely has to throw the football and he's still doing it, right? Imagine if this team played more competitive ball games, the numbers this kid could put up, right? Because you saw the numbers he put up in the playoffs, right? When he was, So anyways, I don't think there's much of a debate here. So David, of course, feel free to tell me if you think I'm wrong. Otherwise, go ahead and tell us who you are taking at number 2.
Yeah, you're wrong just because I wanted to take him. Nah, he's the reason that we talk about overusing the term generational, right? There's not a generational prospect every year. He actually kind of is, he could be. Probably will be. As an Ohio State fan, I was like, oh, how are we going to replace Marvin Harrison Jr.? And true freshman Jeremiah Smith steps in and is arguably better from the jump. So, kind of hard to miss with that one, it feels like at this point. Anything could happen, but that feels like a slam dunk right now. As far as this pick goes, I'm kind of stalling because I'm still unsure. I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna go with probably what chalk would be at this point. Well, maybe not, but a little bit more housekeeping. We forgot to mention this. It's relevant to my pick, though. We did not include Arch Manning or Lanorris Sellers in our 2026 rookie tiers videos. We believe they're going to be in this draft class, so we did include them in the player pool for this class, which is why I'm taking Arch Manning, Texas quarterback, at 102 here. It's definitely a lot of projection. He struggled to start the year mightily, but he's starting to pick it up lately. Another thing that's really not helping him, Texas has 19 drops as a team. Leading receiver, Ryan Wingo, has 6. We'll probably say his name here in a little bit, but his team's not doing him any favors. He did look bad at the beginning of the season, like I said, but he's starting to find his groove a little bit lately, putting a few good games together in a row in SEC competition. Still not really putting the ball in too much danger, under 4% turnover worthy plays. Not great, but not terrible. Taking a little bit too many sacks. Still has some things to figure out. Like I said, he's starting to put it together. He's pretty athletic, so he's got some running ability. He's certainly got the name. So I don't think this is another Shedeur Sanders. I think Arch is a little better than that. But that does worry me that maybe the name value is carrying a little too much here. But also we know the name value sometimes brings some artificial dynasty value. So I think all in all right now, if I had to make a 2027 102 right now, it'd have to be Arch Manning.
I think that's fair enough. I think what he does with his pressure to sack ratio, I think that really pops out, and he's really not doing that bad. I was looking at the passing touchdown leaders, and when you just look at P4 guys, he's in the top 20 for passing touchdowns. It's his first year starting, so we've seen Fernando Mendoza this year. More every time these quarterbacks get more experience, they get better, and he's got all the best coaching out there. So I definitely think he's going to take a step next year, and the rushing is very enticing. Now 103 is really tough for me. I think I might surprise a little bit with this pick, and I'm going to go with Auburn wide receiver Cameron Coleman. Now, I just think as an NFL draft prospect, he just checks a lot of boxes. When you look at his size, he's about 6'3", 200 pounds. He's in contention for the catch of the week. Every other week, he makes an incredible catch. So he just has a really long catch radius, really good ball skills as well, which in the 24/7 Sports Freaks list, he was featured on there when he was coming out of high school, because there was an impromptu dunk contest that broke out at Dabo Sweeney's house when he was visiting Clemson, and they was raving about his ability to just dunk in the ball, and he just has incredible hops, and the athleticism pops off the charts. He actually had a 4.48 40-yard dash. I don't know where they get this testing from, but this is from 24/7 Sports. They said his broad jump was 10 foot 8 inches. So I think he's got incredible ball skills. He has really good athleticism, really good size. That's checking a lot of boxes for me. And as a freshman, he was 2 yards shy of 600 receiving yards. Anytime you get 500 plus receiving yards as a true freshman, that is really good, especially when you're doing it in the SEC, the Big Ten, some of these better programs as well. This year, the production isn't really popping a lot, but the quarterback play there has been pretty poor. Their quarterback, Jackson Arnold, he got benched, and now they got Ashton Daniels throwing the ball. So his production, though, he's at 617 yards so far in the season. I just think he's going to continue to go up. Like I said, he's just checking so many boxes for me. The only one he really has to check, other than maybe seeing that production go up, is just to see like the details, the route running and whatnot. But yeah, I think NFL draft is going to be really good for him because he's got a lot of really strong traits.
Can't disagree with that. Love him as a prospect as well. And I'm happy to be able to take a different SEC wide receiver at the 104. I think there's just elite wide receiver prospects in this class, like guys that broke out as a freshman and guy that broke out as a freshman in Alabama wide receiver Ryan Williams. Guy I'm very excited to get here. 6 foot 178 are his college measurement. Little small weight wise, but at that 6 foot mark. But I do think that that's kind of the size that NFL wide receivers are going. I think hopefully he puts on a little weight before the pros. I'd love to see him at like 185, 190 ish. I'm okay with him being below 200 pounds. Freshman, great season, 2.51 yards per route run. 865 yards, 8 touchdowns. This season, a little bit down on the yards per route run, 2.36. Has seemed to not be quite as dominant. 573 yards, 4 touchdowns so far through the season. But after a freshman breakout, I'm not too concerned about the maybe a little bit of a step down that we've seen from him. He's still projected, as a round 1, even potentially a top 10, very likely top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Of course, we could see that slide a little bit, but I just think he's a guy that I trust Alabama, and I trust a freshman breakout from a 5-star player at Alabama in the SEC. Right? None of this is fluky. I'm sure he's going to be a great NFL wide receiver in a long line of great Alabama wide receivers. It's not LSU, it's not OSU, but I still trust that they're going to produce good players when they're actually good players and they're not just speed freak Henry Ruggs type of guys. Right? This is a guy that we think is actually a NFL, route runner guy that can do it all. So to me, kind of a no-brainer here. David, who is next for you?
Yeah, good pick there with Ryan Williams. He's struggled a little bit this year. A little worried about that, but I think maybe it's more usage. His 20% slot his freshman year. He's up to 60% this year. I don't know if that's because the other guys are better outside or because he's their best slot guy, but he should pick it up. I'm not worried about him. He was an electric freshman. He looks the part. I do think he still ends up probably like a top 10 pick. Like you said, Justin, y'all going to call me a homer or whatever. Do what you got to do. I'm going to go ahead and take Julian Sayin, Ohio State quarterback, here at 105. I thought about taking him at 102, to be honest with you. I understand his upside's a little capped, especially for fantasy. He's not really going to run around much. That being said, he moves really well in the pocket. He's got great pocket presence. He's able to climb the pocket. He's able to move around and make throws on the run. So he's athletic enough to stay alive in today's NFL. He's just not going to give you a few points a game in rushing, which you love in fantasy. That being said, this guy is arguably the most accurate quarterback in college football history. First quarterback in CFB history to have 80+% completion percentage through 10 games. Look at completion percentage in the Big Ten on throws of 10+ yards versus FBS opponents. Saying 66.7. Some people's QB1 in this class, Fernando Mendoza, 56.8. Some other people's QB1 in this class, though he'll probably end up in the 2027 class, Dante Moore, 59.8. So saying is first 66.7, Dante Moore second 59.8. That's a pretty big difference. And that's 10+ yards. You look at his throws over 20 yards, 22 completions on 34 attempts, 864 yards, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. So I understand he's small. He's 6'1", 208. So people are a little concerned about his arm strength. Like it's not Josh Allen. It's not Patrick Mahomes. I get that. But when you combine, he's got enough arm strength that when you combine it with his processing and his accuracy, I'm not really worried. I think he can push the ball down the field in the NFL. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback. Everything he's shown me, he just looks the part. Ball comes out of his hand nice. It's a good spiral. He's just so accurate. The ball placement is absolutely elite. So I think those are things the NFL values, and I think that'll get him drafted pretty highly.
Yeah, I think he's the safest quarterback out of this entire class probably right now. I mean, his performance this year is arguably the best in the entire college football landscape. I mean, he's in the running to win the Heisman for sure. So definitely a good pick there. I'm very, very tempted to take there's a couple of high upside quarterbacks, but if I'm doing this draft today, like honestly, I think I just want a little bit more safety. So I think I am going to go with a wide receiver, and I'm going to take Clemson wide receiver Bryant Wesco. Now, this year, when looking at this class, there's only 2 wide receivers in this draft class that are higher than him on a yards per route run basis. That's Jeremiah Smith. Wow, shocker. And Mario Craver, who honestly, he's a really interesting prospect as well. If he was a little bit bigger, I would definitely be really high on him. So yeah, being the third best in yards per route run, on a Clemson team that has a lot of really good talent. I mean, TJ Moore, love that guy as well in this class. Antonio Williams, I like him in the 2026 class as well. So definitely impressive, especially with the quarterback play kind of taking a dip this year. But he also had 700 receiving yards as a true freshman last year, and that's the first Clemson wide receiver since Sammy Watkins to do that. And I think he was a top 10 pick, I believe. But there's a lot of highlights of him. He's just wide open, and he's got good size at 6'2". He's a little bit on the thinner side for 6'2" at 185, but it's still pretty good size. But yeah, it just surprises me how often I see him wide open. So I'm like, okay, I don't know if it's just based off the athleticism or the route running. I'd like to take a better look at that. This year, he was off to a pretty good start as well. Unfortunately, he suffered a neck injury. Hopefully, that does not cause any issues down the road. But through just 6 games this year, he has 537 yards, 6 touchdowns. So if he had played 13 games, he might have had 1,200 yards or so. It would have been somewhere in that neighborhood on a per game basis. It would have came total to. So 1,200 yards, 1,100 yards or so from a sophomore. That would have been really incredible. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see with that injury, like I said. But I just feel really confident in him right now just based on what we have seen.
Yeah, I would definitely be considering taking him here at the 107. I do agree with that general principle of I feel safer with what he and many of these wide receivers are going to mean and the staying power. I know that the QB2 in this class is probably going to go well above this point. I don't feel as confident in nailing that at this point, but if I have to guess, and I'm going to make a guess here, I'm going to say at the 107, I will be taking QB from Florida, DJ Lagway. In our last mock draft, he actually went pretty well above this point. I believe we had him go at the 103 in that draft. So according to that, I'm getting a pretty good value here. Can be pretty excited about that at the very least. Lagway is a very traitsy guy, right? Very athletic guy. Has not ran for that many yards statistically this season. I think it's 182 is what I have. 186 and a rush yard and a touchdown, on 42 rush attempts. Sacks get taken out of that too a little bit as well. So when you look at that for college rushing stats, like that's pretty phenomenal to me still. JP, were you saying he's had some injury issues?
Yeah, he had some lower body injuries, so I think that's probably affected a little bit of that as well, just not running as much this year.
But definitely somebody, I think he's shown enough that he can do it. Like if I'm considering between him and like a Sellers, I think Lagway, well, I think from what I've researched, people I've listened to, he still has some developing to do, which is fine. But I think I've seen enough out of him as a passer to not doubt that he's going to. And then also, like, I'm going to be honest with our listeners here. I know as we continue falling down a little bit further the draft board, JP and David are a little more tuned in than me. Last 27 mock we did, I didn't participate. I'm kind of diving into the rookies a little bit more in preparation for next year and the off season. But just when looking at like mock draft projections, right? He went as the 101 in a mock draft that I'll pin in the bottom from Draft Sharks. That was a very recent mock draft, maybe a month ago. And he's probably going to go top 10 if he doesn't collapse, right? I feel pretty comfortable saying if he doesn't have a collapse, I think he'll be a top 10 pick just based off the traits. So definitely, I think my pick here.
Yeah, I do prefer Lagway a bit to Sellers. They're kind of like the same guy after their sophomore years, but Lagway hasn't had a bad junior year yet, so we have hope for him to develop, and that's the big thing for him. He's got all the tools in the world. He just needs to develop a bit as a quarterback. Florida's getting a new coach. Maybe the new coach coming in is going to be good for him. If not, maybe he can transfer somewhere with a good coach that can develop a quarterback. But yeah, if he does take that step forward, he might be the best challenge for 101 to Jeremiah Smith. Like, might be the only guy that could actually give him an honest challenge if Lagway does end up hitting. That being said, I feel like I'm kind of boring here. I'm going to go with another quarterback. This is my quarterback 3, actually, and I think it might be a little bit of a surprise to you guys. I take Notre Dame quarterback CJ Carr. 6'3", 210, got almost 2,500 passing yards this season, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 110 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. But again, remember, sack yards come out of that. 7.3 big time throw percentage, pretty solid. 10.5 ADOT. He leads FBS in yards per pass attempt. So love that. This is a pretty good quote. It's doing a little bit of the lifting for my evaluation here, I'll be honest. Maybe a little more than it should. But at this point in the process, I think that's okay. It comes from Tom Brady. He says about CJ Carr, he looks like the best QB I've seen in college since Joe was at LSU, Joe being Joe Burrow. Continues, he knows the game and can make every throw necessary. I think you see a lot of that. You see, I mean, I haven't watched a ton, but from what I've seen, from what I've read, he seems to understand the game very well. He understands what the defense is trying to do. And this is his first year starting. So you finish this year, you get a whole other year of starts under the belt. I think he could grow a ton. He's got the size. He's got the arm. He's going to, he's on TV every week. Notre Dame gets their game on TV every single week, I believe, still. So he's going to have the platform. I think he could end up a pretty high first round pick in that class.
Yeah, I mean, in our Devy League, he's definitely somebody I'm like, how high would I want to take him? Because, like you said, doesn't have like a ton of rushing, but he's gotten a lot of really, really high reviews from scouts, just the cerebral, the mental part of the game, I think he definitely has that. So I think he's probably underrated in this class right now with all these big flashy names. And one of the big flashy names is going to be the ones I take next here, and it's going to be Lanorris Sellers, South Carolina. At this point, the upside is it's definitely worth it. And I'm even still seeing in Dane Brugler's top 50 for 2026, he left Lanorris Sellers in there, and he still had him in the top 15 or top 20. So I'm like, wow, okay, well, I still think very highly up on him just based on the tools. And I think we have seen at least a small step for him as a passer. Hasn't been a big one. Hopefully we see it next year, and I kind of want him to transfer. I've heard rumblings about maybe Miami being interested in bringing in a quarterback after Carson Beck leaves, and that seems like it's been a pretty good path for rehabbing quarterback value there. So that could be very interesting. But he just has rare rushing ability. Like I'm telling you, if you watch him, it's crazy how he just shrugs off guys that are like 300 pounds. He's just incredibly strong and fast. It's really fun to watch. And he's drafted in the first round, and he's starting. And pretty much every single one of my fantasy teams, if I draft him, he's going to be in my lineup because that rushing ability. I mean, even Justin Fields isn't phenomenal. I mean, that was way too high of a bar. Justin Fields is not good. And he's still a good fantasy starter because of that rushing ability. So as long as he is starting, he's going to be a really good fantasy football asset. It's just the job security is definitely in question right now. But it still seems like people are still viewing him as a first-round pick just based on those tools and the projected step that he could be taking as a passer.
Would have been my pick there as well. Makes it a little bit difficult here for me. I want to take the RB1 here. Not entirely sure I know who that is. Gonna just make a guess just based off of, again, some projected way too far out draft capital and some statistics that I'm seeing. And I think the guy I'm going to go here is going to be Isaac Brown, running back out of Louisville. If he does what he does this year, so his efficiency metrics are phenomenal. 776 yards on 90 rushes. So we're talking about 8 to 8+ yards per carry. I have, if the statistics aren't wrong, 0.44 missed tackles force per attempt, over 5 yards after contact per attempt. Seems just to be explosive. Seems to have some receiving ability. So I could be wrong on him being the RB1 here, but I think he's the type of guy that has a lot of what I'm looking for as a running back. So definitely could be wrong. And it's a risk I'm kind of just willing to take on Isaac Brown here. Don't necessarily feel super confident on anybody left at quarterback. Raiola could go. The wide receivers, I'm not sure who the next wide receiver off the board is personally. So just going to go ahead and go this direction here.
Yeah, he was my RB1 too. So good pick. That's who I would have taken. Yards per out run a little bit low, but I do think he looks like a better receiver than that would suggest. Just absolutely explosive though. Great player, a lot of fun to watch. Kind of Devon Chain-ish. Maybe not. That type of player. Obviously talking upside case there. Next player on my board, I guess I'm gonna take him. This one's gonna be kind of fun. It is the one and only tight end I have on my list. That is LSU tight end Treydez Green. He is a monster of a human. He's 6'7", 240. Don't have testing numbers, but he's a freak athlete. He is probably gonna blow up the combine if he does test when he goes. Mostly plays in the slot, mostly a big slot guy. But if you're good enough at that in the NFL, we don't really care for fantasy. A little bit of concern there, but he looks like he's going to be able to play that role in the NFL. No, not great metrics. Only 270 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns on the season, 6.6 yards yak per reception. So like you would like to see a little more production. Kind of the same thing with this year's potential tight end one, Kenyon Sadiq, just a freak athlete, not a ton of production. With Sadiq, he plays at Oregon. They're doing really well in the passing game. At least with Treydez Green, he has the excuse that LSU's been struggling on offense. So hoping his third year they can really put it together. Not sure who his quarterback's going to be. Not sure who his coach is going to be. But hopefully they have an offensive scheme that utilizes this behemoth of a human. And we get to see a really fun junior year from him.
Yeah, he would definitely be my tight end one in this class. So cannot blame you there. And just looking who's available, this is why people love the 2027 class, because I'm just like, sheesh, like it's still a tough decision for me. I think I'm going to take a player that I just really, really love a lot, honestly, and it's because he's just an absolute beast, and that is Michigan State wide receiver Nick Marsh. He leads, according to PFF, this class in missed tackles forced, and that's with 22 missed tackles forced. We're like, what, 2/3 of the season? 22 missed tackles forced. Yeah, so in 2024, he had 649 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. So like I said, if you're over 500 plus, that's really impressive. He's at 6'3", 203 pounds. So really good size. A lot of times I feel like those big missed tackles forced guys, they're, like more compact, like 6 foot, 200 pounds, not 6'3". So he's got a long catch radius. He's really strong after the catch. He's productive already. We've seen some productive Michigan State guys, like Jaden Reed and Kewan Coleman. I wasn't a big Kewan Coleman guy, but still, this team in Michigan State has produced some good wide receivers, so I really like him a lot, and I just felt like I had to include him in the first round.
Yeah, that's an interesting pick. I think he was probably my next receiver, but I've got this big old group of running backs that I don't know how to sort through that I think I put slightly ahead of him, just because I value running back at this part of the draft typically is where I shift my value to running back. But I do like Marsh, and if he continues to develop, he probably is going to end up as a first-round rookie pick in this very loaded class, as we've been discussing.
No, I definitely am interested in Marsh as well. A interesting prospect for sure. He's also projected, for what it's worth, in some things I've seen as a probable round 1 or early round 2 pick in the NFL draft. Again, it's very early out, but as the prospect profile, the pedigree, the statistics to warrant that type of consideration. And if he is a round 1 wide receiver, definitely think you're getting a steal at the 112. At the 201, I'm not entirely sure what to do here. I'm not considering any wide receivers on the board here. I don't think that there's anybody that, from what I know, really warrant consideration over some of these running backs and potentially over a quarterback here. Here's the thing, like if Raiola had more mobility, like a dart even, I'd be a lot more likely to take a dart on him.
They don't count sacks against your rushing yards at the NFL level. So
does he have, how's his mobility?
I mean, it's not great, but you have to he gets sacked a ton. So when you're looking at his rushing yards, that is heavily nerfed by his massive amount of sacks, which is a different concern.
Yeah, that's concerning to me. I think I'm going to go a running back here. There's a lot of running backs that are very interesting to me. I'm not entirely sure who to pick. So with not really knowing who to pick here, I think I'm going to just go off of kind of just vibes of draft capital, who was higher in production before the season as well. And I'm going to take the running back Jaden Baugh from Florida. There's a lot of guys in the SEC here who are just real tempting to take here, and I don't know who's the right guy to take. I really have no idea who I should be taking here out of these guys, but that will be the direction I'm going to go. So statistically, he does not have the best profile out of the guys that are there, right? 164 rushes for 808 yards, 6 touchdowns, 31 receptions for 175 yards, 0.73 yards per route run. Not phenomenal. It's not terrible. Missed tackles forced per attempt, 0.28, 3.3 yards after contact. He's just a really big-bodied guy that people love. I'm not sure he's the right pick here. I don't know who the best RB to take here is, but I do think think NFL teams are going to love his size, and he seems to be able to do just about enough as a pass catcher that if at his size, if he's able to get the goal line work and some pass catching work, and he gets some of the NFL draft capital that he's currently projected, I think he's projected as a, probably day 2 pick right now. I've seen some people speculate he could go late round 1. I don't know that I'd count on that, but whether it's him or a different running back that I end up taking here, I think running back's the direction I want to go at the very least. And that's the guy I'm just going to go ahead and plant my flag on forever. Guaranteed 201 next year. Anytime I have one.
Guaranteed 201. I love that. He's not going to go earlier. He's not going to go later. No, I think it was a good pick. I had him in a group of about 5 running backs here. He, as you said, 6'1", 230. He's a big guy. The other 4 guys, all either 5'10 or 5'11, between 205 and 210 pounds. So he definitely stood out in that regard for this tier for me personally. It's really hard to pick between these guys too. They've all got pretty good efficiency numbers. I think I'm gonna go with the guy who was popping a lot earlier. My one concern here is he has basically no receiving profile. Hopefully it's that they aren't asking him to do it, not that he can't. I'm going to take Missouri running back Ahmad Hardy. He is 5'10", 206. He leads the NCAA or FBS, whatever you call it these days, in rush yards with 1,345, 15 touchdowns on the year, over like a 0.36 missed tackles forced per attempt, almost 5 yards after contact per attempt, just under 0.2, or I guess just under 20% of his runs go for 10 or more yards, but only 0.22 yards per out run. Would really love to see that a little bit higher. Had a terrific week last week, actually. SEC co-offensive player of the week, 25 carries, 298 yards, 3 touchdowns. So huge week last week. Freshman year had a very big year, but it was at Louisiana Monroe. Slightly lower competition, but again, 1,300 yards. Pretty good efficiency metrics. So back-to-back years. He did have 0.71 yards per out run in his freshman year at Louisiana Monroe. Gives me a little bit of hope that maybe he's not a detriment in the passing game. And the way he runs the ball, if he can just be okay in the receiving game, he could be a really good NFL running back.
Yeah, he was definitely in consideration. What I see is when I've watched him a little bit, he's got incredible contact balance. You can be fantasy relevant and not have a big pass catching role like Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor didn't really have the profile as much, but we'll see. Hopefully he develops it a little bit more in his junior year. That would be huge for his prospect profile, with pushing probably into round 1 for me. I'm going to take a running back as well, and I'm going to take Ole Miss running back Kewan Lacy. I think he's a darn good runner too, just like Ahmad Hardy. I mean, we're looking at not quite as many yards, but he leads the nation in touchdowns, missed tackles forced, and first downs run. He's got 85 missed tackles right now. That's really incredible for a sophomore here at 5'11", 210 pounds. I like the size. I think being at that 210 to that kind of 225, that's kind of the range I like, unless you're just like really, really fast. So I think he's got enough size, and the receiving profile is pretty decent as well. Yards per runs, it's not super high. It's 0.62, but he's at least 24 receptions. Makes me think that he's at least competent there. I wouldn't say he's a high-end pass catcher with these numbers, but just from what I'm seeing, he runs really, really tough. I've watched some of these Ole Miss games, and it's fun to watch him in Trinidad Chambliss. Man, I wish Chambliss was a little bit bigger. He's so much fun to watch. But yeah, you said co-SEC player of the week. That's what Kewan Lacy was last week here with the 31 carries for 224 yards and 3 touchdowns. So a bunch of SEC running backs here that are really popping in their second year. And yeah, he would be the guy I rock with here.
All right. So based off of him going there, and again, those 2 guys, I love their statistics on the ground, right? Those 2 guys, I think that's why I'm not sure on my pick at 201. Although I did put my stamp of guarantee on it. Their production profiles, I think, are a lot more impressive than Baugh's this year, obviously. Right? Those raw stat numbers are phenomenal. Love all 3 of those running backs. One more running back I'm very interested in going on here, but just at the 204. I think at this point, even though I might end up regretting it, I am gonna go Raiola here. I'm seeing that projection of a, potential first rounder in the NFL draft. If he is a first round quarterback at the 204, that's a steal, even if I don't necessarily fully believe in him, because this is super flex. I need starting QBs. He's a rookie. He has one good game. I can fetch a first from him. I just turned a 204 into a first. So just process-wise, I have to go that way. Definitely some concerns over the sacks he's taking, like we've already kind of talked about at previous times. But anytime you can get that quarterback here, first of all, I mean, that's just kind of a no-brainer. It's super flex. And then he obviously has done some good things, right? 18 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, 72% completion ratio this season. So do like to see some of that type of stuff. Obviously, we'll kind of see what happens. We're going to see how he recovers from that broken fibula. I don't think there's any major long-term concerns about that, right? It's a fibula. We see that on some running backs, right? A broken leg bone. And we're kind of more worried about like potential low recovery of that, but even so, it's not one of those injuries like an Achilles where you expect the person to maybe only be able to get to 90% of what they were before, right? So I think at this point, that's my pick.
Yeah, I think you got to take him there, even if he's a day 2 pick, a mid-second round quarterback with upside and super flex. Like that's a good pick. We saw Jalen Milroe going around this point, so I definitely think that's a solid pick, and I would not be surprised if he ends up as a first round pick. He's got a lot of experience, started as a freshman, just needs to clean up a few things, show that he's healthy, and he's got a real chance to rise up our board, at least. Some people already have him pretty high. Like you said, though, the sacks are very concerning. I'm down to 2 running backs in that group that I was discussing last time up, and I think I know which one I want to talk about, even though I got the other one a little bit higher. I assume JP's going to take the other one, but I thought he was going to go the last few rounds, and he hasn't yet. I'm going to take Rutgers running back Antwan Raymond. He is 5'11", 205, so right in that same size that we've been taking here. Same range as Kewan, Lacy, same range as Ahmad Hardy. He's also very efficient, over 0.3 missed tackles forced per attempt, a little bit under 4 yards after contact per attempt. About 15% of his carries go for over 10 yards, and he's over 1 yard per out run, which you love to see. Had about 500 rush yards as a freshman, so not great, but not nothing as a freshman. And then we're talking about great performances from running backs last week. He was actually the Doak Walker running back of the week. I'm not exactly sure. I know Doak Walker award is the best running back of the year. I don't know how much weight their weekly award carries, though. But 41 carries, 240 yards, and a touchdown. 17 missed tackles forced in one game. That's just crazy to me. So really interested in this player, want to learn more about him, but at this point I'm willing to make a bet on the efficiency metrics, and happy to take him here.
We have a segment on our X channel where we do standout players of the week in college football, and I think he's been close or in it a couple of times for sure, so he's definitely been coming on our radar here. And I don't blame you for taking the shot on him at this point in the draft. Now I'm going to go a wide receiver that I think has a good chance to go in the first round here, and that's going to be Texas wide receiver Ryan Wingo. He was featured on 247's Freak List coming out of high school. They have 50 players on there every year, and it's not just offensive players, it's all of them. But they're just talking about how Wingo, with a certified 6'1" and a quarter inch, 205 pounds, he logged 18 sub 11 second 100-meter dash attempts. So very fast. He had a 10.55 100-meter dash there. So with that size and that speed, and also for producing right out the gate, because this was another freshman breakout, and it was also in the SEC. And at Texas, they got a lot of talent too. So when you're producing there, that's really impressive as a freshman as well. We saw with Xavier Worthy, and he was small too. But Ryan Wingo, he's listed about 6'1", 6'2", 215 with that speed, almost 500 yards as a freshman. And then this year he's building on that with 655 yards. He's right at about 2 yards per route run. That's a good mark too, also for a very talented wide receiver or there, and as a sophomore. So I think he's got a pretty good chance with the being in the SEC, the production, the size, speed, all of it. He checks in a lot of boxes that he could definitely be a potential first round pick.
Yeah, he is someone I've seen right on that 1-2 turn in a lot of mock draft projections. Again, very early mock drafts, right? But anyone in that range, right? You could go either way. You could be a 3rd round pick. You could be a 1st round pick very easily, right? If you're projected in that range. So definitely a lot of upside to that pick you made right there. I'm not as ballsy as you. I'm not going to take any big upside shots here. I'm going to take an RB prospect I believe in, guy who I like, Trevor Etienne. He made Trevor Etienne kind of look iffy by kind of outperforming him a little bit as a freshman. A running back Frazier from Georgia. I like a lot of his metrics here. We're looking at 0.69, nice, yards per route run, about 3.5 yards after contact, 0.21 missed tackles forced per attempt, 647 yards on 117 carries means we're above that 5 yards per carries. Only 3 touchdowns. Again, 8 receptions for 54 yards. Very limited receiving work, but when he is running routes, seems to be doing something with them. And I trust Georgia for running backs more or less. There's certain teams I trust to to provide certain positions, and I trust them to be providing me a running back that will be able to do something in the NFL. So I know that might be a little oversimplified process, but you trust certain teams for certain things, right? There's wide receiver universities, there's tight end universities, and I've seen a lot of Georgia players be very relevant for me in fantasy football. So that's kind of my limited analysis there.
I was going to jump in because he's just a little bit. He's been a little bit of my guy because I took a shot on him in Devi, and I thought he could be kind of RB1 in this class. But yeah, he was high up on the freaks list. They say that, which this is a super high compliment for Georgia. They said that he might be the strongest player there, pound for pound. He bench pressed 225 pounds 23 times as a true freshman, and he also ran a 10.58 100-meter dash. So like that strength and speed is just like eye popping. So he proves at the combine like he could be a big riser.
Yeah, that was definitely going to be my pick if he was still on the board there. I think he's got a solid shot at RB1 in this class still. I think, like you said, at Georgia, you can kind of excuse some lower production numbers. They're really not playing for guys to put up big numbers. We know the NFL knows Georgia players are produced, are developed and things. They're trying to win a national championship. They're trying to keep him healthy, keep him fresh for the run. So I think that's understandable, that little bit lower rushing totals than the other guys we've been talking about in this range. I don't think that's his fault, though. I think it's very possible he ends up RB1 in this class. I think I'm actually going to take a receiver for... Is that the first time this whole mock that I've taken a wide receiver? That's insane to me. It is going to be Clemson wide receiver TJ Moore. He is the other big wide receiver out of Clemson. He's 6'3", 205. He plays almost exclusively outside, which is why I slightly prefer Wesco, his teammate we talked about a round ago. I think this is terrific value for Moore here. He and Wesco have very similar numbers. I mean, on the season, Wesco has slightly better, or Moore has slightly better numbers at this point, but he's healthy. Wesco's not. So that makes sense. A little bit under 2 yards per out run at 1.99. Love to see that improve next year. He's almost exclusively outside, like I said, over 90% outside. I'd love to see him move around a little bit, but if you're going to be exclusively one or the other, I think being outside, the NFL likes that a little bit more. I'll be very interested to see what happens next year. They might have a coaching change. There's been talks maybe of Dabo getting fired. I think Klubnik has to come out this year, right? I think he's out of eligibility. So he'll probably have a new quarterback if he stays. Going to be an interesting situation, but if he's in the right situation, he could thrive and he could end up as a high NFL draft pick and go much higher than the middle of the second rounds on our rookie picks.
Yeah, I bet you were surprised, David, that I haven't taken him yet.
Frazier? Yeah, oh, totally. I thought Frazier was going to go sooner or more. I thought Moore would go sooner too.
Yeah, back to back, those are kind of players that I like. So I feel like I got sniped in the mid to late second round here, 2027 draft. Who would have thought? Yeah, no, I love those picks. I think TJ Moore could also ascend. He's kind of the last guy that I was very interested in. He was a very high pedigree guy coming out, and if he was a little bit more versatile, I think I'd like him more. I just see a lot of downfield stuff, so I'm just hoping he's a complete receiver next year. But I am going to go with another running back here, and I'm going to take Michigan running back Jordan Marshall. I've seen him listed at 5'11", 216 pounds, and love that, right? And he has created a lot of big plays when Justice Haynes has been out. Like Justice Haynes, I love him there, but unfortunately, he's been injured. I think he might be missing the rest of the year. But in the last 4 weeks without Justice Haynes, he's got 569 rush yards and 7 touchdowns. That's in four games there, right? Very, very impressive. He was also, I've referenced this list so many times, it's kind of crazy, but he was also one of the guys on the freaks list, so highly athletic player as well. And also so I think he's going to step in. Justice Haynes, I expect him to declare this year. He's probably going to be top 3 or 4 back in this class. And Jordan Marshall, he's not looked that much behind Justice Haynes when he's gotten the football. So I think he's going to be in for a big end of this season. And then next year, he could really blow up, especially with Bryce Underwood. They're really, really high pedigree quarterback going into his second year. Could be a lot of fun next year. So I think he is definitely a player I would take here at the end of the second.
Peppering RBs, whether it's 2 years out or 2 days before the actual rookie draft occurs. RBs in the late second, usually the direction I want to go. In tight end premium, another direction I often like to go is tight end. So I'm going to take another guy here who I think is a little more speculative based off of his production, but was a 5-star tight end recruit, and that's going to be Degraaf, tight end from Washington. Seeing conflicting height, 6'3", a lot of places 6'4" on the team's webpage. He's a young guy. It's possible he's gained that inch or two. We'll see what he measures up, ultimately ultimately eventually, but a 5-star recruit, hasn't done a whole lot. 280 passing yards, or 280 receiving yards in that neighborhood, and 1 touchdown. Projected in the mock, again, I'm referencing potentially as a round 1 pick just because of his athletic ability, good blocker, etc. Really kind of very speculative at this point, but this is the type of guy I want to take a shot at in the second round if it's not a running back. And I think we're kind of past the point of round 1 wide receivers. It's a tight end. That decent draft capital is the way I kind of want to go here. So pretty speculative. I'm just going to kind of leave it at that.
My board says receiver, but my brain says running back at this point. So I think I'm going to go with the running back. And if the receiver I want to take doesn't get mentioned, we'll circle back and talk about him for a second. A couple of players that we might do that with. I will take Texas Tech running back Cameron Dickey. He is also 5'10", 210. Very similar sized class for all these running backs right now. He has almost 1,000 yards rushing on the season. About a quarter of his attempts he forces a missed tackle on. 3.5 yards after contact per attempt. 16% of his rushes go for 10 or more yards, and he is over 1 yard per route run, which you love to see. That Texas Tech team is actually pretty darn good. If you haven't been following college football, they likely will be in the playoff. They look like, hard to say if they're built to last, but they look like they're a pretty good team. They've been recruiting pretty well. So I would expect them to have some spotlight games, maybe even get a playoff push next year for him, which I think can really help build some momentum going into the offseason. So at the end of the second round here, I'm going to get a highly productive back on a good team with some receiving chops. I think that's worth a shot.
Yeah, good pick there. He's not somebody I've watched a whole lot of. I'll have to write him down and keep track of him there. But I definitely agree with what you said before that pick. Is this point, running backs better. The prospects right now, just with not having all of the data yet, there's some really interesting receiver prospects. There's two that one of them is leading this class in yards per route run, and the other one is leading the class in receiving yards. Who would have thought at the end of this round? And let me tell you why. So I'm going to go with Rutgers wide receiver KJ Duff. He's leading this class, like I said, in receiving yards. That is the guy here. And the reason he's not higher, because when you see he is 6'6", 225 pounds, as a freshman at 425 yards, and this year is 923 yards, just slightly above Jeremiah Smith. The reason I don't have him higher, and we haven't taken him higher, is just he does not seem like a guy who is separating a whole lot. When you look at how many contested catches he has 31 of his attempts were classified as contested. He came down with 17 of them, so he does a really good job coming down with that. But that's telling me that he's not separating a whole lot when he's getting that many contested targets. But there's definitely something to be said for a guy who's tracking to be at 1,200 to maybe 1,300 yards as a true sophomore. So that is very interesting. And at the 212 with that kind of a profile for someone, I mean, if he takes another step forward in production as a junior, I mean, he could be in the Bolitnikoff race potentially. So I think at this point, I just have to mention him here. And the receiver, I don't know if this is who you're talking about, David, but is it Mario Craver? You're nodding. Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's 5'9", $165, or he would have gone a lot sooner. But he's a really good player, mostly a slot player at his size, obviously. But like you said, leading the class in yards per route run, 3.63. Just a highly productive player. He's in a good offense on a good team. Bolitnikoff Award semifinalist this year. It's just 5'9", $165. It's hard to bet on him until we know the NFL is willing to bet on him, really.
Yeah, honestly, if you look at the top 20, 24 fantasy scores at wide receiver, they're pretty much all like 5'11" to 6'5". It's pretty rare for a guy to have a ceiling at 5'9", unless you're like Tyreek Hill. He might even been 5'10", honestly. But we'll see what the verified testing is. He could come in at 5'8". But if you're the leader in yards per route run, he's got 18 missed tackles forced. He was still in consideration, but I just went with the guy with a lot more size, actually.
All right, so I'm going to do a quick little recap and then a couple summarizing questions. 101, Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State. 102, QB Arch Manning, Texas. 103, wide receiver Cameron Coleman, Auburn. 104, Ryan Williams, Alabama. 105, Julian Sayin, Ohio State. 106, wide receiver Bryant Wesco, Clemson. 107, QB DJ Lagway, Florida. 108, QB CJ Carr, Notre Dame. 109, QB Lanorris Seller, South Carolina. 110, RB Isaac Brown, Louisville. 111, tight end Treydez Green, LSU. And the last pick of the first round, 112, wide receiver Nick Marsh, Michigan State. Second round picks, 201, running back Jaden Baugh, Florida. 202, Ahmad Hardy, running back Missouri. 203, Kewan Lacy, Ole Miss running back. 204, QB Dylan Raiola out of Nebraska. 205, running back Antwan Raymond, Rutgers. 206, Ryan Wingo, Texas. 207, RB Nate Frazier, Georgia. 208, wide receiver TJ Moore, Clemson. 209, Jordan Marshall, Michigan. 210, tight end Degraaf, Washington. 211, RB Cameron Dickey, Texas Tech. And 212, wide receiver KJ Duff, Rutgers. So, I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys. These rounds are getting copied and pasted into our show sheet right at the top in case you don't have them all tracked yourself. Can you guys both go ahead and give me a favorite pick from this draft? I'm going to go ahead and start with David first. Kind of by that I mean probably define what you mean by favorite, then tell me who it is.
I was kind of hoping you would define what you meant by.
I'd probably say value would be generally what we like the most in drafts, right? But
I mean,
that's what I'd say.
value, like most likely value, safest value. I think Nate Frazier was great value, and I feel confident that that's a good value. I think potential best value is Dylan Raiola. So a couple of your picks, Justin. If Raiola puts it together, he could be a early first. I do think Nate Frazier has a chance to be the RB1. So yeah, I'll give you some props, Justin. I'll say one of those two, depending on what you mean by best.
David, I do take two. That's actually the two I was eyeing too. Both times I picked right before you, and I was debating between the two players, but I kind of went with somebody that I really like.
You can give me some props on TJ Moore if you want.
Yeah, no, I think he could definitely. If he's ascending right now, and I mean, he could have a 1,200-yard season next year. I mean, just Nate Frazier. I mean, he led Georgia in rushing as a true freshman, and he's just. I think he could be a combine just big time winner. And when I watch him, man, I don't know, he seems like he's got some explosiveness, some twitchiness, and also just incredibly tough. So I think that would be the one. If I had to pick one, I would just go with Nate Frazier, since you kind of talked a little bit more about Raiola there.
And again, I probably don't know as much about what I'm talking about here, but my brain just goes to it. That's the 109. Lanorris Sellers. I don't know if I ever will want to start him in or actually have him in Dynasty Fantasy Football League, but I guarantee you that when he's on the draft and rookie drafts, when he's on the clock and rookie drafts as the guy that has that rushing upside, people are going to be willing to pay up for him. And getting a guy that I think is he's a franchise cornerstone achieving asset. Like he's a guy that can get you into the conversation for 2 years from now. Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, right? Like you guys want the new one, the younger one? Let me add something to him to get up there, right? So I think at the 109, that's a phenomenal value. Gonna give you some props there, JP. Think that's a great value at that point. And last but not least question here, real quick. How confident are you just in our, we have 2 rounds right here. Every time we do a 2-round rookie mock draft, before we know landing spots, before we know stuff, we feel pretty good about it. We always do. We felt pretty good about it before this year's draft, and then come the 211, 212, we didn't know who the heck to draft, right? How we actually feeling about this, and do you think we're just lying to ourselves like we do every year?
Confident in the names and the order, not at all. Confident that it's a strong class and we're going to be happy with it, pretty darn. I think so much as to say that even going into the second, I think the first round is going to be so strong it's going to push talent into the second, like we saw a couple drafts ago in 24. So yeah, I would say, like I said, these names are going to change orders a ton. Some of them aren't going to be there, some of them are going to return. We're going to have guys that we project currently in the 26 class that are going to return and that are going to enter their name into these mocks. So I would just say I'm confident in the strength of it. I'm just not confident in who that they are yet.
Of course, and we're never really confident in the order of these players, right? Until it's more just the question of, very often, like, second rounds get disappointing when before we thought they would. We always assume there's this depth. Hey, I love the early third, and then often I don't like the late second once it actually comes to fruition. So yeah, that's kind of the vibe I'm wondering about. JP, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we still have close to a year and a half more to see on these players. So there's a lot. We only have half their career, and we probably have the less important half of the data right now, honestly, as well. So with the information we have today, I honestly really like what we have. I think the range we have players in, I feel pretty solid about. But yeah, it's going to change a lot, just honestly within the next 2 months, and especially by this time next year.
All right. So would love to hear from everybody in the comments below what you guys think about our draft picks, who we missed. Is there anybody who you absolutely think should have been in the second round that wasn't? Anyone you absolutely think should have been in the first round that we had in the second? Hopefully we don't hear that there's somebody you think should have been the first we didn't mention at all, but let us know if that's the case. Let us know what you think. Love to engage from you, hear from you guys. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the the Dino Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast, until next time.